just wanted to welcome you here at D&J Gallery. We're doing a program called Art and Med. We're doing exhibits about chronic diseases to bring awareness, education, further along education, and raise funds for charity. And I can introduce our charity for this show. Actually, all of the people in the show have Parkinson's disease, and we're working with PCLA, Parkinson's Community of Los Angeles.
Hi, I'm Judy Yars, Vice President of PCLA, and I want to welcome you all today. This is really an exceptional experience to see this amazing artwork. It's also all for sale, just so you know. There's 1 week left, then it will be up, so I always like to put that word out there that the artwork is for sale. But we're so happy that you can be here, and this really helps support all of our programs, and we're thrilled that we've been able to have such a long exhibition. It's been amazing to have the artwork up for over 2 months. It's incredible. And we're so grateful to D&J Gallery for giving us this opportunity. So I hope you enjoy this wonderful panel.
All right. So I want to start with just a number of facts, and not so much for you guys, because you guys probably know this, but anybody who finds this on the internet. So in the United States, 1 in 167 people have Parkinson's if they're 45 or over. So it's a pretty sizable amount. And 1 in 40 who are over 85. So it's something, it's around. So we're all going to have to deal with it. So 60,000 people in the United States are diagnosed every year with Parkinson's. That's a lot of people. So you are going to have a lot of work in the future. So, with that in mind, I'm going to let you guys each introduce yourself, and then I will start asking questions.
Hi, I'm Judith Amdur. I was diagnosed in 2000. My paintings are straight across from me, those three. And I've been an artist my whole life. So, things have changed dramatically for me since I came down with Parkinson's. I don't know how to say it. Anyway, yeah, my right arm just started going like this, and the paintbrush was flying across the studio, and I had to find out what was going on, and that's when I got the diagnosis.
I'm Robin Repp, and I've had Parkinson's since 2019, formally diagnosed, but probably had it for a while before that. I just was going to a doctor that didn't figure it out. So.
I'm Dani Thordason. I'm a movement disorder neurologist at UCLA, and I treat patients with Parkinson's disease, among other movement disorders.
So we're going to start with you, because I tried to research you, and there's not a lot about you online at UCLA. So tell us a little bit about where you studied and how you landed up getting interested in movement disorders.
Absolutely. So I'm also very soft-spoken. I do not have Parkinson's, but I'll try to project. So I think it's important for me to rewind a little bit further than most when I describe where I trained and why I became interested in Parkinson's and Parkinson's research specifically. I grew up on an avocado farm in Camarillo, California, and both of my grandparents, who I lived next door to, developed Parkinson's disease. So it really triggered my interest in the field and also the environmental impact and risk factors for Parkinson's disease, including in agricultural communities. So I studied at UCLA in undergrad and then trained in Chicago under some excellent movement disorder specialists at Rush University in Chicago, circled back to Cedars-Sinai for my residency, and then UCLA for my fellowship training. So I've been blessed with fantastic training and fantastic mentors, and I just started my faculty position at UCLA in September, where I am mostly a clinician, but I also do clinical trials and some epidemiologic research as well.
When you first noticed your symptoms, before the doctors knew what you had, what were your early symptoms?
It's actually several years, maybe 5 years before,
Hold next.
maybe 5 years before, I noticed I had just a little tremor in my finger. And I was painting, or drawing, I would notice it, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. But I did go to my doctor, and I started telling her some of the other symptoms, and she said, I only have 15 minutes here. So I thought, oh, I'm a hypochondriac, I should forget this. But then later, years later, I was at, I think an orthopedic surgeon, and I told him, he goes, you should go to a neurologist. And so I did, and that's when I found out. That was 2019, early.
All right, and what about you?
Well, I thought I had an essential tremor. If you look at the painting of the bridge behind you, I started that in 2019, and you can see it's very detailed. I kept feeling like my hand was slipping all around, and then I bought some gizmo on the internet that didn't work at all. I was supposed to hold my arm and make it so it wouldn't slip, and I could do the detailed work that I always loved to do. And I finally threw it across the studio. I was so angry. And then I felt that the tremor, and you can see it, going up my arm. And as it went up my arm, I went, oh, this is a little big for an essential tremor. So I went to my doctor, and he said, go see a neurologist. And I went through a lot of testing. And finally, he gave me something to take. And he said, take this for 2 weeks and come back and see me. Well, I took it and I said, oh, that was fantastic. It works great. He said, well, you've got Parkinson's. So that's how I found out.
So when people, you can hand the mic back to her. So when people come to you and they're showing symptoms, are you meeting with patients, or are you in the back doing?
Yes, absolutely. I'm 70% clinical, meaning I'm seeing and evaluating patients.
All right. So I'm always, when I talk to doctors, I think of the responsibility you guys have to sort of give this news to somebody. So why don't you talk about somebody comes in, they've been dealing with something else for a while, and then eventually they land up with you, and you have to give them the news. So how do you explain to them what they've got and what their life might become?
Yeah, it's the hardest part of my job, I'll say that. It's not fun news to give. What I'll say is that I've been surprised by when people come to me, often they already have a sneaking suspicion or a fear of what's going on. So a lot of those conversations actually, you know, I say, you know, your symptoms do look consistent with Parkinson's disease, and we just spend most of the visit doing education and talking about what we can do and how do we move forward now. That's what most people are interested in when they first learn of the diagnosis. Other people just want to sit, and having to sit in silence and be there in silence with that person as they absorb that news is also really difficult, you know. As a doctor, I want to be a doer, and I want to do things and get moving on what we can do and what we can change. So, but everyone takes this very differently. So I think that's something that's really challenging, and I'm, you know, still learning is how to respond to people's different reactions to a diagnosis and how they want their treatment plan to look.
So we'll go to you two. So how did you react? How was it when you got the news? Were you feeling more like, well, at least I have a diagnosis, or, oh shit?
Well, I didn't get the diagnosis in a very good way. I went to the neurologist and he said, well, I'll send you for a DAT scan. I said, okay, great. So I went and had the DAT scan, and then it was going to be like 2 weeks before I went back to see him. And I have one of those My Charts where you can look on it, and they posted it up on the... So I was alone, actually, when I found out. And I just read it, and the doctor said, worrisome for Parkinson's, and it had all the description and all that. So that's how I found out. And then it was a couple of weeks before I went back to the doctor. And actually, I didn't end up staying with that doctor. I just thought, if I'm going to go through this... Yeah. I thought, if I'm going to go through this, I want to go through with somebody a little bit different. So I actually found a woman neurologist at UCI that I love, and I've been with her ever since.
Well, my doctor was young and adorable. Of course, I couldn't tell because he had a mask on. But he said, yeah, you have Parkinson's. And I did say, oh, shit. But he said as long as I was proactive and exercised like a maniac, it wouldn't go as fast. So that's what I've been doing. since 2000. And I'm in really good shape, except I fall, but not all that much. And I'm learning how to fall in the class that I'm taking, so.
So what's your routine?
I walk a lot, and I take something called Rock Steady Boxing 3 times a week. I don't know if you've all heard of it, but it's a fabulous program. And I joined it as soon as my brother read about it. He sent me information, and I waited for the studio to open, and I was the first person. And it's really great. I think it's all over the world. We box, which is really good for the right brain, left brain, and there are other physical activities that we do. And some of them look really ridiculous. Some of them look like we're Frankenstein, and we kick our butts, and we do the silly walk. And anyway, but it's all really good because a lot of it's for balance. And I feel that that's really important.
So does this kind of exercise, does it just produce more dopamine, or is it using other parts of the brain for balance? What's happening when she does this?
The simple answer is that we don't exactly know, but there are a lot of positive downstream effects of aerobic exercise in particular, both within the brain and just cardiovascularly throughout your body, as well as helping with the symptoms of stiffness and slowness in particular. So the principles of the therapy of rock steady boxing, and also you may have heard of big therapy and physical therapy, are really to help break you out of this kind of automatic small movements, slow movements. And I noticed that the artist over here actually had incorporated that into their artistic style, which I think is really wonderful.
Which piece are we? Oh,
I'm sorry, I forgot the artist's name. These 2 pieces over here. Yes. They did comment on that in their bio, which I thought was really nice.
So are you guys finding that the treatments are keeping you sort of steady, or are you still having a progression, or?
I definitely started exercising right away. And I belong to something called Rogue in Fountain Valley. It's fabulous. It's a physical therapy gym, all for people with Parkinson's, totally. So I do what's called car moves 1 day a week, and then I do cardio another. Then I do HP Pilates online, and then 2 days a week I go to water aerobics. So I try to do something every single day. And so I've been doing that for several years. And I do the boxing. They have boxing at Rogue. They have a whole variety, dance, to do the big movements and to strengthen. So
I'm curious about that. I find that I've really slowed the progression. I think I'm doing really well. I have not changed my medication since I was diagnosed, and so it's been a long time.
How long ago were you diagnosed?
2000.
Oh, that's a long time.
It's a long time. Yeah, and I consider exercise my medicine. But when she's talking about it, I'd like to do that too. I am noticing a difference in my brain. So I think the rock steady boxing coordinates some of the right brain, left brain stuff, because I feel like Parkinson's is trying to tear it in half. And so I work very hard keeping myself together, mentally and physically.
So my brother had Parkinson's, and he got diagnosed, I think, at 47, and it was pretty aggressive, and he died at 59. And by the time he was 53, he had to be in a nursing home because he just couldn't take care of himself. But like, I'm not going to ask your guys' age, but so I'm 67 now, and I'm trying to decide, because I also have a rare illness, what's part of that and what's just part of getting older. So how do you, I'm going to have you talk about that first. How do you separate normal aging from some imbalance issues?
It can be very, very difficult. I get this question all the time in my clinic. Is this my Parkinson's, or is this something else? Or is this aging, or is this another medical problem? So it's really, I would say, just you have to ask your clinician and have a good rapport with your clinician and be able to take those questions to them. If you're not diagnosed with Parkinson's, but you're worried, do I have Parkinson's? I think that it's time to talk to your primary care doctor and possibly get a referral to a neurologist to help differentiate that, because these are really balanced. These things that you mentioned are really complex entities, and there's a whole world of possibilities that could be leading to balance issues in one person versus another. So it can be very difficult, and much of the time, even in our patients with Parkinson's, they don't only have balance issues from Parkinson's, they may have neuropathy on top of it worsening their balance. So it can be complicated, to say the least. And yeah, some of it is aging along with Parkinson's disease too, right? So the best thing that you can do, as you've already emphasized so well, both of you, is exercise. Exercise, exercise, exercise are my first 3 recommendations to patients when I meet them.
I'm going to agree with that on the exercise. In some ways, I've said to myself, and I've said to other people, getting Parkinson's was one of the best things that happened to me. Because you suddenly take your health really seriously, super serious. I immediately lost 20 pounds. And I started a workout regime. I started putting myself before all these other things that I was doing. I'm running an art gallery. I do a lot of things. I play online bridge, internationally where you're competing. That's my brain. But you have to put your health first. So mornings are all blocked out with all these exercise things. And then studio time, then helping other artists, that kind of thing. But I can't say how important the exercise is. It's just changed everything. And I'm 77, so I'm hoping I'm doing the right thing. It seems to be working, I hope.
Well, I'm happy to say I'm 76. And,
Young thing.
Yeah, I know. I'm a really young person, and I am at heart. I actually did have some balance problems before I was diagnosed, and I did go to physical therapy because of that. I was concerned, and I got a whole list of exercises to do, which helped. And that I do work on my balance all the time. What was the rest of your question?
How do you ever think, oh, am I just getting older, or is this
No,
the Parkinson's? Can you distinguish?
Okay, when I'm speaking and I can't remember a word, my friends go, oh, that's nothing. And then I think, it might be nothing, it might be Parkinson's. Am I losing my mind? Is it Parkinson's? Is it not? So I don't know. The aging, the physical ability, some of it, I wouldn't go jump a fence like I would when I was a kid.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Yeah, no. And I really try to moderate my crazy behavior outside, so I don't hurt myself. Sometimes I'm too spontaneous for that. But in general, I think I'm aging pretty well, and Parkinson's is something to deal with, and I'm doing the best I can.
So how does it affect your artwork?
Oh my God. Well, if you look at the bridge behind you, the painting of the bridge, that's mine. And I started that in 2000, and all of my work up until then was that detailed. So I was working on that, and I already said this, I don't know how repetitive I am, but the paintbrushes started falling out of my hands. So then I got this contraption, that didn't work, and I kept working on it, and I occasionally I would just put it in the corner to be bad, like you'd put a kid in the corner to be bad. I have to make jokes, otherwise I'll cry. But anyway, so I did that, and then it took me a very long time to finish because it was so detailed, and I'd have to, first I was bracing my hand like this, and then I was bracing it like that, but I did finish it. And then since then, the one on the far right is Monet's garden, and I've done some pathways. It's gotten looser, which is actually a good thing, because I was so tight, and not tight, precise, very precise. And I'm not as precise anymore, so that's kind of freeing. And the one in the middle is a volcano, and I had to do it fast for a show. And I actually, for the clouds, I started using my thumb. And it was so much fun. So I hope I'll get back to it, because part of Parkinson's, the tearing the brain apart, it has something to do with concentration. It's harder. Mm-hmm. And also wanting to do something. I always took art to be for granted. It was my glue my whole life. And then now it's like, and that's amazing to me, because I really scorned anybody who said they were an artist. But I don't know, the intention's there. I have a studio, I have all the stuff I need. So I have done quite a few since I was diagnosed, but it isn't the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you? These are yours.
Yes, I'm more busy now than ever with different exhibitions, different places, and working on my body of work. I just finished an animation in a foreign language.
Wow.
Working on a lot of projects at the same time. These were sort of physically painful to finish, but I did it because of the posture, you know.
Because of the size, or?
No, just the physicality. Yeah, well, a lot of them are big, sort of big for me. Usually I do a lot of photography, so I'm working in Photoshop, that kind of thing. But I do multimedia. I just had a film about protest, as a matter of fact, up for 2 months at the Orange County Center for Contemporary Art. So I like filmmaking, and this animation was kind of for fun. It was all hand illustrated, old school animation, you know, with the watercolor painting. And I noticed when I was doing the watercolor painting that it was a little bit shaky, but it wasn't much of a problem. But making these paintings, which were finished a couple of years ago, just the physicality of all of it. I remember a lot of bending over, painful, you know, because I did them off the stretcher bars. I painted them flat, so it was a lot of bending over and physical pain finishing. But I was determined. I think that's one thing about getting Parkinson's. I had all these unfinished paintings up in the attic, and I thought, it's now or never. I have to do it. All these projects and everything. I mean, it's something I probably should have thought about anyway. But when you are faced with something like Parkinson's, every day is a gift. So now you want to make sure you do all those things you meant to make. What were those projects? What's that artwork? What do you have to say? Now I don't want to waste a minute. So I'm super active, super
Did
busy.
you do figurative work before, or is this a result
Oh,
of
yeah.
something's going on with my body, so I'm gonna?
No, I've been doing figurative. This series worked, figuratively speaking, because they're all sort of full of angst and pain and suffering type paintings, and they're sort of expressionist. So they really fit. I'm glad I did them at the time. So.
That's great. All right, we're back to you. So one of the things, because I work with doctors with so many different specialties at USC, sorry, It's
okay, forgiven.
I always talk to the doctors about how they pick their specialties. Like, I'm a big believer that certain people should be in the emergency room because they work on adrenaline, and then there's people like you might work with the same patient for 20 years.
Yeah.
So what do you think, as somebody out there maybe who's watching, who's getting a diagnosis, what kind of person do you think they should be looking for when choosing a doctor, and what makes you suited to work with Parkinson's people?
Interesting question. So, I mean, I think different types of physicians work well for different people. I think that people who are patient, who know how to listen, and are really going to, you know, it's very obvious when a physician actually cares. I learned that as I became, you know, I have a chronic illness, and I became a patient during my residency, and suddenly it struck me. I was seeing these excellent physicians, nothing negative to say about them, but the humanity wasn't quite there. So I think having a connection with your physician, knowing that they're on a journey with you that's going to last for the rest of your life, is really important. So many people, I think, go into movement disorders and Parkinson's care for that reason, because they really enjoy the relationships that they have with patients. And I just feel very blessed to be brought into these people's lives. I'm inspired every day by people who are facing Parkinson's. I mean, it's really remarkable, you know, in clinic, and then I come to something like this and read all these bios about the themes of, you know, acceptance and resilience in this disease, but also fighting, you know, it's remarkable. I think it's just such a special patient population to work with, and that's what kind of drew me in before I even started my medical training.
Have you had good and bad experience with doctors? Like you said, you switched to a female doctor. So why don't you guys talk about what makes a good patient-doctor interaction with what you're dealing with?
Well, the neurologist I have now, I think part of it is she's a woman. I like that for starters. The one I went to begin with.
Is that because the difference in temperament, or just because if they're gonna be touching you?
No, I think it was her, she was much more cheerful. The first neurologist I went to seemed sort of emotionally remote, disconnected. And I just remember talking to the receptionist, and I heard them say, all he does is do tests or something like that. I thought, I don't want to just go to somebody that's just going to test me along the way as I collapse and deteriorate. So I have a very cheerful, kind of, I don't know, thoughtful, smart. We talk about other things when I see my neurologist too. So she calls me Parkinson's light. So I like
that's
that.
nice.
And I always want to be an A student when I go there, and I want to score really good. So.
What about you?
You sound like my twin. I'm not quite so light as she is, but I like getting a good score when I go. And she says I've got Parkinson's, not so light, but light. And I'm doing very well. The first guy, Dr. Bashir, did you know him? Anyway, he was the one that I was dreaming about, but he moved on. And I really liked him a lot because he'd sit there in his big sneakers and then like this and his chair, and he just made me feel really comfortable. And then the person that was studying with him, a woman, took over when he moved on, and she's great. She's great. She's not as much fun. She's not as cute, but that doesn't matter. I learned that a good doctor is a good doctor, and it's most important. And she takes care of me. I don't really reach out to her that frequently, but when I feel that I've got something else happening, then she really takes care of me. I'm going there, I think, Monday. But we always go through a little bit of texting, and we don't really talk much about my personal life, but unless I ask about our kids or something.
So did you seek her out, or was it just she?
She segued in.
Mm-hmm.
She was his she was his intern. And at first I didn't like her because she sprung a memory test on me one day, and he said that he was surprised that I could even drive a car and get there and get myself dressed because I flunked it so badly. But I think I was just so scared I just couldn't even think. I wasn't prepared. But anyway, so I didn't like her, but she's very nice, and we're fine.
So one of the things, my brother and I have been part of a study at NIH since we were kids because we have this other disease, and so every couple of years we go to NIH and they would do these mental tests. And one year they gave, all these tests. They show you the pictures. What's this called? I could not remember what a funnel. I couldn't remember the word for funnel, which I will never ever forget again. And I just remember walking out of that test crushed, like I'm forgetting words. And this is like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I will never forget funnel again. But like the fact that it would not pop in, I'm like, I know what it is. You pour the water. Like I just could not come up with the word. It was totally stressing to me.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah. All right, so I want to get back to our doctor here. So I'm going through the different types of movement disorders. And so you guys have some shaking, you can't really tell, a little bit on you. So my brother had the stiffening up kind, sort of Muhammad Ali. If she couldn't speak by the end, he didn't really move. Are they different causes, different parts of the brain? All the other stuff seems sort of, the bad posture, the shaking, but how come some people freeze up and some people shake?
It's an excellent question. So as many of you probably know, no two Parkinson's patients look exactly the same. So there's an extremely wide spectrum of disease. Some patients have a remarkable burden of non-motor symptoms, so cognition being affected, mood being affected, autonomic symptoms like blood pressure, whereas others tend to not. And so we still don't have a complete understanding of why this is. Certain symptoms, if they show up too early in the disease, might indicate that the patient could have a different type of Parkinson's, basically an atypical Parkinsonism, which we know is caused by sort of different underlying pathophysiologic processes. Within Parkinson's, we're still figuring out how to subtype or characterize these different kind of groups, or how to group them, and which groups are overlapping. One way in which we can do this is by genetic testing. So we have been able to characterize patients who have a certain genetic subtype of Parkinson's. Some might have faster cognitive decline, others might have very slow progression. So we've been able to characterize the disease in that way. But in reality, only about 15% of patients with Parkinson's have a known genetic risk factor. So that still leaves us with the majority of patients where we don't know why they have Parkinson's, and we have theories and conjectures about why they might have developed Parkinson's, and therefore a certain symptom before a different symptom. But we're still gaining an understanding of that right now, and that's what there's lots of ongoing research as to how Parkinson's develops, so that we can intervene earlier and have disease-modifying treatments.
Well, I think that's an interesting question. Why and what were we exposed to? I taught darkroom photography for 25 years, which is a lot of chemicals. So I have to think, if I look back at my life, probably exposure to the chemicals of the darkroom must be. It just has to be. The other thing you were saying about the memory, that's, I think, my biggest fear is that I'm going to lose my mind. And that's why I play the bridge, because you have to have short-term memory, you have to come up with alternative strategies on the spot. It's all timed. So I'm checking myself every morning. Can I still play bridge at a really high level? I'm playing with 20,000 people. I want to score at least, pretty high, in the top 10 or 20% or something. So I'm checking myself. And so far, so good. But that is my biggest fear, the mental part.
I think it was environmental. When I was a child, we grew up next to a creosote family, and there was what they called a cluster of people that died of lymphoma. Later on, I got Hodgkin's lymphoma twice. I've had 2 stem cell, they call them bone marrow transplants at City of Hope. Got through that. And then got Parkinson's. And I was going to school, graduate school in Boston University, and the air there is really good. It just comes right off the ocean. I never had any problems. And when I moved to downtown LA, I was living in my loft, and I started getting horrible headaches. And I went over to urgent care, and I told them about that, and they said I was allergic to the air. I never heard of such a thing. But anyway, I really think that took a toll on me as far as, and then my husband had a horrible kind of dementia, and I took care of him for 4 years, and it was so completely stressful. I'd never felt anything like that in my life. And after he died, that's when I was diagnosed.
My brother was he was a set designer, and he was around a lot of chemicals, and he was convinced that it was that, but the correlation is not causation, which you probably hear a lot. I would think most people come in and they're like, I think I know why, but there's no way to prove. Like they could be 100% right, or they could be 100% wrong.
Yeah. So, sorry? Agent Orange is a known risk factor for Parkinson's disease. So it's a complex answer to a seemingly simple question. Environmental exposures no doubt have a huge role in the development of Parkinson's disease. This is a really, really difficult thing to study because multiple reasons. One, it's extremely difficult to track exposures. We're exposed constantly to different chemicals and different things in our environment every day over the course of our life. So it's really, really hard to identify, tease these apart, and do contact tracing. So it takes often a huge, environmental event, like a huge spill or something, and then a bunch of cases cropping up in that area for us to then look retrospectively and say, hey, is there a correlation here? Then we have to take that information to the lab and try to see if we can prove that theory in the petri dish or in animal models, right, to understand why that happened. Another problem is the latency problem. So often exposures happen very early on in life, don't manifest with Parkinson's for many, many decades. So part of the research that I do at UCLA is with pesticide exposure. and looking at these farm worker communities in Bakersfield and Fresno. Thankfully, California is the only state that actually has a pesticide use registry, so we can actually look at the pounds applied of pesticide at a given time across this whole map, and then use geospatial information systems and basically people's location of their home and their work over what years, and try to then do these very complex statistical analyses to figure out which pesticides might actually be problematic and which ones are not, because they're not all problematic, so it's very complicated. And we need pesticides for our food source, right? So it's a really difficult question to answer. There are brilliant people working on this. Dr. Carly Tanner up at UCSF has been doing this since the 90s, and she's still at it. So, it's something that we're continuing to work on, and basically drawing between the epidemiologic research, so looking at our populations and then bringing that to the lab to test theories, I think is the best way, the quickest way we're gonna come up with answers.
I just want to add, as an artist, we have to be careful about our materials.
I was just thinking.
It's the first thing I always tell any new artist or young artists or students. Like now, I only do watercolor, no more, real turpentine. I use paint that doesn't have fumes or terpenoid. I paint.
Triple-X,
And no, but I'm
Don't
not.
tell me that.
I'm not even doing it anymore. This is the end of painting for me. I do Photoshop photography. No, all digital now. So, and watercolor pretty much. I do some cyanotypes. I finished those paintings painting outside so that it would be in an enclosed area. But that's a big worry for artists.
Yeah, I found out that you said don't tell me. It is a do tell me. And I use water-soluble oils, and you can clean those up with water. But terpenoid is bad, even though it doesn't have an odor.
Yeah.
But I used to use an oil stick, and then I would use straight out turpentine to mix it and to blend it and everything. And I did that in close quarters too. But now, no more.
Art's gonna kill us. So, not to be morbid, but because I just keep thinking of my brother's progression. Are you guys thinking about later on, like when you both seem very independent now, but and for you, once an illness gets to a certain point, it doesn't affect just the person, it's the family, there has to be caregivers, things like that, and I'm just wondering, are you guys thinking ahead, or are you just, forget it, I'll deal with it when it shows up?
Well, I'm very lucky. I have a very supportive husband. He's also my studio assistant. He's very good at framing and hanging artworks. Yes, we talk about the future and trying to plan. I feel pretty optimistic though. I still wake up every day pretty cheerful, optimistic, looking forward to the day, thankful for every day. I haven't caught that depression that I know a lot of people get from Parkinson's. Once in a while it tries to slip in, but I chase it away.
I made a decision to be happy. When I was diagnosed, I thought, okay, I can curl up in a ball, get into a dark room and die. Cry, cry, cry. But I said, no. And each time I get a new symptom, I go, for maybe a half a day or so, I'm very depressed. And then I go, okay, this is a new reality. Anyway, so my late husband, I don't have a husband. I never had kids. I have a very small family. There's no one to take care of me. So what I hope is that the stock market doesn't tank. And so I'm watching it. And meanwhile, I'm traveling my butt off all over the world as much as I can. It's not without problems. I mean, one time I had to ask the tour guide to button for me because I couldn't do it, but it's not that bad. And I'm having a lot of fun until I can't, and hanging on to some money so that I can fend for myself. Because I don't know where this is going. I don't know how long it's going to take. Maybe I'll be lucky, I won't get worse, but I know it's a progressive disease. Mm-hmm. So I just do the best I can, And it's there, but I try not to dwell on it. I don't too much.
So I guess probably a lot of you guys here have read Michael J. Fox's book, and it's, he's very honest about his decline, but he also has so much money to have. He's like, I'm going through Baton and I fell off a path, but my assistant picked me up. And so you're reading all this stuff, and he's very open about not being able to walk and losing his balance, but he's got 24-hour care, people there every second, so it's not a realistic view. So let me bring this back to you. So you're probably dealing with people whose whole families get involved, and it becomes a whole caregiving situation. So how is that for you to deal with?
Yeah, so I meet patients at all different stages of their disease. I get referrals of people who are already completely bedbound versus people who are just receiving a diagnosis. So it's very variable, but I like to meet people as early as possible in their disease course, because when I meet them, I immediately want to figure out, I tell them this is time where we build your team, not just your healthcare team, but your team of support with your family, friends, whoever that may be. Or you're going to seek out people in the Parkinson's community or another community that, like the art community that you're part of, and kind of develop those supportive contacts. So it's very hard. I mean, not everyone has the same social support, not everyone has the same financial support. So part of, my job is trying to figure out how we can build a team within what you already have in your life, and how we can reach out to either organizations or, people in their personal life to kind of build that resilience and prepare for the worst, but hope for the best when it comes to their course.
So this 1 out of 40 people who are over 85 who get this, is Medicare, is there enough care in Medicare to help them?
It's a complicated question. Yes, there is. I mean, so Medicare covers Parkinson's care quite well, including, deep brain stimulation surgery if it's deemed necessary. There have recently been new pump therapies that have come out for subcutaneous infusion of levodopa that we anticipate Medicare will start paying for, as hopefully very soon in the next couple of years. So there is, from a medical standpoint, there's excellent coverage when it comes to, if changing a care setting, if someone needs to be placed in a nursing home, et cetera. That is also covered to an extent with certain caveats. The challenge is finding a place that's good for that person, be that a, assisted living or skilled nursing or a board of care or just a community where they're going to have people around them, even if it's not a formalized, medical or healthcare setting. So yeah, it's a great question, and I won't get into politics today, but
Today is the day for politics.
It is indeed.
Does anybody have any questions for anybody on the panel here? We'll start with you.
Diabetes before and the questions that they always ask about diabetes, but does stress make diabetes worse? Because diabetes makes the stress worse. It reduces the chicken and reaches the brain. What you see with a lot of diseases, diabetes is one of them, cardiovascular disease, exercise is great. Probably because it's been shown independently that if you just exercise a group of people who get into a peer match, with their exercising, you're going to have less anxiety, less depression. And the effect of depression is about the same as mind-to-mind work. Talk therapy, withdrawal, and
Can you
Absolutely.
sort of wrap that question up into?
Yeah, so he's just commenting on the independent effect of exercise on mood, stress levels and how that surely trickles down and feeds directly into improvement in symptoms and diseases like Parkinson's disease, as well as, diabetes is another kind of similar chronic disease. So, yeah, absolutely.
So not to insult any patients or anything, but we find as care partners that sometimes as progression occurs, a little bit of a lack of self-awareness can occur on the part of the patient. There's also the spotlight effect that can be very common. Can you speak to how important journaling can help you in terms of managing the therapeutics of their day-to-day life, as well as how care partners are such an important part of managing that whole process?
I love journaling of all sorts. Symptom journals, blood pressure journals. It's really helpful for me as a provider. And some patients will even send me a journal prior to their appointment so that I can look it over. But also, I don't know if you're talking more about therapeutic journaling or kind of documenting symptoms, but both the process of putting it down on paper is therapeutic as well. So, and it gives me a window into what's going on with your disease. So I think it's a really powerful tool.
How about you two?
I don't journal, but that's a good idea. I do a lot of writing about art, but I don't journal. I don't have any connection to Rogue, but I have to give it a plug because if you join Rogue, physical therapy, they have the voice, swallowing, the voice. They have support groups. I mean, it's very extensive, not just the gym and all the physical stuff. You can do it online, you can do it in person, you have Zoom meetings. It creates a tremendous support system. I feel pretty lucky because I have Rogue and all of that support system. Plus I have all the people in the art connection. I have a lot of that. And then, of course, I have my Facebook friends too. I think we might be Facebook friends. A lot of people follow me. So I feel lucky, and then I have a really supportive family. A few of you who are here today.
So on Facebook, are you?
Can I just ask, is that
ROGUE. It's in Fountain Valley. You can do it online. I started online a few years ago. And then this year, I realized I was losing my motivation a little bit. And I thought that the exercises they were doing were kind of hard. But now that I go in person, I realize, oh no, I can do that. Because when you're home, after you're supposed to do 20, at about 15, you go, oh, I don't want to do anymore. When you're in a class, you're like, oh my God, those people are way worse off than I am. I better keep going. I better finish.
So on Facebook, are you in Parkinson groups for support, or do you not even want to deal with talking about Parkinson's when you're on
Parkinson's group? I have the art sites, and I have a Tahitian language group I'm in. I used to live in Tahiti, and we go back frequently, actually. We're going back in October and September. I'm working on an exhibition for next year that's going to be all about some of my experience living in Tahiti, and I've done extensive writing about that, so that's going to be fun.
Have you and Gauguin side by side?
I wish I was in Canada.
How about you?
I don't journal. I don't. But I walk around, I think a lot. Try not to get in my own head too much, but I really just think I think about nature, and that helps me a lot. Just get out and get in nature and relax. And for my head, I'm taking Spanish class. Wow, online. Yeah, and I think that's really good. I've always wanted to, now I have the time. And I'm staying with a person in Costa Rica 3 times a week, yeah, and I keep going back. So that's me. I'm not a journal. I'm not a journal. Of course I'm not a journal. I did journal when I was younger, and I've been reading back on some of the things I read. And it's quite incredible. And I always go, oh, I was such a good writer back then. But now I haven't in a long time.
I look at stuff I wrote a long time ago and think, oh, I was a good writer, but I was really stupid.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to say that, but that is true, yes.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I'm often concerned about research as it relates to different groups like African American, Asian American. Is there such a research that's focusing on diversity of subjects. And where would I find it? Will it help me? What can you tell me about it?
So I'm so glad you asked this. We have an excellent group at UCLA, and one of our physicians, Dr. Jennifer Adrisi, her entire life mission / career goals / NIH grants and ongoing projects are about clinical research in Parkinson's in the Black community. And while her research is specific to there, she has multiple projects going on. I can talk to you after about them specifically, like Black with PD. Our whole group is really focused on diversity and increasing diversity in clinical trials. It's so important because we've just studied, no offense to the white males in the room, but we've been studying white males with Parkinson's for decades now. And it's just not capturing the diversity in terms of phenotype and ethnicity that may lead to different genetic risk factors or other risk factors in their environment. So we really need to capture a more diverse group, and we acknowledge that as a field, and there's lots of ongoing efforts in that space. The Parkinson's Study Group meeting last December, that was a major focus of one of their kind of keynote speeches was how do we get out into these communities and diversify our clinical trial population. So I actually work in a community clinic that's about 25 miles up towards like Orgura Hills, Calabasas area, near where I'm from, because I wanted to go back to that community and implement, increasing the diversity, including especially the Latino population up in Ventura County and bringing them into our trials. So I'm so glad you asked that question.
Come on up. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody on the panel. Thank you for and the PCLA community for partnering with us. And I'd really like to thank Pam, because Pam makes this space available, and she doesn't take any money for this. She is donating the space and the time, and when art sells, it goes back to the charity or the artist. She's not taking anything. It's an amazing thing she's doing here to build community around illness, so let's give her a hand.
I just wanted to invite you all to look at all the artwork, and if you go back up the steps to the right, there's more in the back gallery too. So and there's a bathroom back there if anybody needs the facilities, and there's some food, some refreshments too. So you don't have to leave right away.
And we also have a couple other artists here. Ben's Hobbies here.
Oh, that's
His work is in the back.
Oh,
amazing.
okay.
Amazing. Yeah, great. And as Ted was mentioning, we give 25% to the PCLA, and so definitely look at your.
Thank you all.